So, hello everyone. So just to be sure, you can hear me just fine and see me? Well, let me see me. But you can all see me, correct? Well, hear me. Okay, great. So, let's begin today's lesson then. Let's code Java. So, today I will be explaining how to program motors, how to set up motors in another epic programming challenge. We can review what we've learned so far with even more challenges, and we can engage in some autonomous navigation, in which case I'll then explain how odometry works. So, first one, configuration. So, in FTC, you'll be installing two applications. One of them is the controller, and the other one gets put on your robot in order to remotely control that, to say signals between the two phones. In order to configure it, you go to the menu bar, press configure robot. You then go into the expansion hub portal, which is it's effectively a hub in which you can that connects to the motors, servos, and odometry, everything else that makes your robot work. And then afterwards, you can click on motors, servo, digital devices, etc., which connects to the motors, devices, whatever is attached to your expansion hub. And afterwards, you can select the type of motor it is, and then you can name the motor, and then done. That would be how you would configure a robot. So, when programming, you need to import the libraries you need. Since in programming, I suppose we've gotten over this, but in programming, since not everything is immediately presented to you in the raw code, by importing things from other libraries, this allows you to speed up your time. As, for example, if you want some code that makes a motor spin, you can't accomplish that with raw Java. But if you use an import, you can already find someone who already programmed the code and made it easy to use and refined it a lot more. And you can just copy and paste that basically into your own code. And then this helps significantly speed up your development instead of having to manually retype every individual line of code and every function yourself. So next one are variables. These are variables, private DC motor, private DC. These are basically the motors. The front right, front left, they represent the motors. So then afterwards, hardware mapping is that it then links these variables to the motor, and then afterwards, send the DC motor.class refers to the class of motor it is, and then afterwards, this name harbors back to the name you put here, which is in your active configuration. When you name this like motor test or something, it's the same name. So as a result, you can match up the names. But to be clear, you can't name two motors the same motor name in order to prevent duplicates from happening. So you also need to note that you should reverse one of your motors. And what this basically does is that this basically negates the power symbol, where if, say, for example, if you set one motor to spin forward and you set the other motor to spin forward, this will instead cause one motor to spin forward, and reversing in the reverse motor will cause it to spin backwards. Why is it necessary? Well, when you have a robot and when you build it in real life, the motors are not actually separate from each other. There's not like a left right motor. There's not like a right motor. They're just motors. They just spin one direction only. So when you go and put two motors crossing each other, how can I demonstrate this? It's a good spinning object I have disposal. So let's take this pen, for example. When you have a motor, they will both turn the exact same direction. Okay, this is clockwise from my perspective anyways. To you, it will also be clockwise. When you go and put this on an axle and you turn it, when one motor goes forward, it should turn like this. But when you set it to the other side, since the motor in order to revert the motor, you have to flip it the other direction. Instead, this will cause it to spin the wrong way, causing the robot to just turn. So you have to reverse the direction of one of the motors in order to go and prevent your robot from just simply spinning around, and to make it also more intuitive for you to operate it. As when you go and program the code, you don't want to set front left to positive number, front right to a negative number. It just doesn't become very intuitive after a while. But technically speaking, you don't actually have to reverse one of the motors. It just makes programming a lot easier and a lot easier to comprehend. As say, for example, if you wanted to reverse it without reversing the motor, you would have to do front left set power 1, front right set power -1, which, well, that doesn't make a lot of sense if you want to make them move forward. It gets even stranger because if you want to reverse, you have to do set power front left set power -1, front right set power 1, which it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. And it makes it hard for your code to read. It makes it harder for others to read your code as well. So this is why you need to reverse the motors. And then afterwards, the if op mode is active, this basically wait for start basically means that after you start your code, this part at the beginning part is the initialization, where when I should probably explain this. When you write your code, there are two portions of the code. One of them is initialization, and the other one is op mode. Now, the reason why you have an initialization is that in FTC, there are two different phases. There's an autonomous period and there's a manual period. During the autonomous period, you would just initialize your code. And since it's not op mode, basically means that you are basically operating it by hand, maybe like a remote controller or something like that. You're not required to, of course, but realistically, you're probably not going to be able to fully automate a code that's sufficiently capable of covering every single case imaginable. So when you initialize it, your robot will basically generally run its autonomous program, do whatever actions you set out to do, maybe go forward, turn left, I don't know, pick up a block or something. And then it then waits for start, which basically means that after the initialization is over, you then do if alt mode's active, which you then have to click a separate button on your controller. This will then let it go into op mode, which will then let you go and operate these next set of commands that you put into it. Typically, you will create programs where you can manually remote control it, and this is more or less just a loop, which will keep on looping around until you disactivate unactivate the op mode. But since for the purposes of this, since there's obviously not a controller, it's just following a set of algorithm commands. So I hope this introduction to how all of the stuff you've learned in this class actually relates to how you would typically use this in the real FTC. I hope this makes a lot more sense. At this point, if you have any questions, do ask me. If you have any insights, perhaps, any notices. Just leave it in the chat or speak up. If you don't have any questions, I can move on. Does that really all make sense to you? If you want to go and add some clarification, I can pull up a hardware map. So I suppose this image is a bit blurry, isn't it? I don't know, maybe this helps you understand a bit better. Well, unfortunately, this thing's a bit blurry, but this would be the expansion hub, this little block over here. This connects to your phone, and this relates back to the setup process and the configuration bit. This is what you're configuring the robot to do so. And well, this then connects to a bunch of sensors, motors, batteries, etc. The battery is kind of just switch, so the expansion hub doesn't interact with the battery. That does interact with all these other components, sensors, PC motors, those types of things. And those are what you would be naming. Yeah, basically you just select the motor and the name on it. So here are some more motors then. So could you open up the virtual robot simulator at HTTPS? I'm gonna post it in the chat. Could you go up and open that, and then select the onbot Java, and then copy and paste the code at the link. So follow the comments and add 2 more motors named ring flywheel and ring shooter. Run your code and make sure there are no errors and see what happens. Oh yes. Also, I do realize that I do remember some person in the first lesson, they're asking about this. So now it's finally your opportunity to go and really play around with the flywheels and shooting bits. When you're done and you've experimented a bit, perhaps, do tell me so I can know when to move on. And just share your progress in the chat, or if you have any questions, any struggles, do be sure to tell me. Oh yes, and just to be clear, you are supposed to do more than open up the link and copy and paste the code. You are actually supposed to follow you follow the instructions in the program. So if it does not like shooting it initially, that is to be expected. If you have any questions, if you have any troubles implementing this, feel free to ask me. I'm more than happy to help. Oh, yes. Let's take a look. See here. Oh, oh, did I do something? No. So, it says okay. So I see the confusion. So, when it says that the program it doesn't work, the error refers to the fact that let me open this up myself. You're feeling a bit slow today. Um, oh, I suppose I already have one opening. All right, so I'll just pull over this one. You can see my screen, yes? So when you copy and paste it, yeah, okay, great. So when you put it here, it says you need to put the hardware map. The name wing is configure for ring shooter. You need to configure hardware function this and use the ring flywheel. So when you initialize the program, if you don't set the hardware map, which was covered in this PowerPoint, you'll get the error, cannot read the power set power. This is because when it's trying to shoot the flywheel, as you can see, it's lining up to do so. It needs to go and it needs to ring flywheel.set power. But since you didn't map the variables ring shooter and the flywheel to anything, which you need to create the variables up first of all, and then afterwards you can map them to the robot, it's not actually able to do anything. So if you read the comments correctly, you need to go and create two variables for the DC motor and flywheel. You then afterwards have to go and do the hardware map for this. And then afterward, you then should adjust the code a bit so that it then aims for the top of the red goal. And then afterwards, if you've done that, then for the blue goal, then. So does that clear up any confusion so far? Or great. So again, I'm aware this isn't like the typical one where you just or there'd be a challenge on a separate PowerPoint, but no, instead it's just just built into the thing. If it helps you, I'll go through this hardware map so you can go and remember how to do this perhaps. Again, variables, hardware mapping. Yep, I'll just go into the slide. When you have managed to figure it out, do be sure to tell me. Also, again, for those who may or may not already be done, again, be sure, again, there is an optional challenge in the comments where you can set the robot to shoot for the blue goal instead of just leaving it to shoot at the red goal. So if you would like a bit of an extra challenge, then feel free. If anyone has any more questions, don't be afraid to ask. again, when you are done and you have managed to complete this little challenge, do be sure to tell me in the chat, or you can just say it out loud. Doesn't really matter. Or communicate me to some other creative way of your choosing. So, have you managed to complete the challenge, or should I still give you all a bit more time? Or like you're close to competing? You can share your progress, that'd be great. Oh, great then. Just saying, you don't actually have to complete the blue part. It's more of an optional thing. Oh, my voice. That's good. Is anyone else done with it? Or you find it, but it doesn't say I did. Or could you share your code perhaps? Or send it into the chat, I suppose. Again, if you have any troubles with this, don't be afraid to ask me, okay? I do more than just lecture. So, Darren, could you like, if you have any troubles or if you want me to help you, could you like send a screenshot or copy and paste your code into the chat so I can figure it out? Or if you think you got it by yourself, then don't worry about the name. Just don't worry about it then. Okay, well, the code just loaded. Let's take a look here. Yes. So Darren, yes. The important thing you have to realize is that first, when you create a variable, you have to first create the variable of the motor first, and then afterward, you then map the variable to the motor itself. The problem in your code you see is that here, let's pull this up so you can see it. So when you correctly mapped it to the well, actually, ring shooter is supposed to actually be mapped to is there an error? Okay, good, give me a second. Okay, so ring shooter is supposed to be mapped to, first of all, ring shooter, and ring flywheel is supposed to be mapped to flywheel. They're supposed to be mapped to their literal names. The next thing, though, is that you don't have the variables of them here, right? You need to create two variables of DC motor for ring shooter and flywheel. Remember, capitalization matters. You need to private DC motor, ring shooter, private DC motor, flywheel. Since you didn't include that when you map the things, ring shooter doesn't actually exist, so you're not really so you're mapping the DC motor to basically a variable that doesn't actually exist, like trying to assign meaning to a fictional word. In order to fix your problems, you would have to go and sorry, this isn't for you, Catherine. This is for Darren. If this applies to your code, then that'd be great. But basically, just you need to define the variable, and you should also not set it to front right, front left, because that's because the name of this goes towards assigned to whatever motor is trying to be assigned to it. So it's not obviously assigning it to the motors that cause the robot to drive. It instead causes the robot to ring shoot. So I should probably just give you the names of them. Actually, maybe a bit hard to guess. Let's see here. So the name of the ring shooter is called ring shooter, and the name of the ring flywheel is called ring flywheel. This may seem somewhat obvious, but if anyone doesn't understand that, then yeah. Well, let's take a look at your problem, Catherine. So hardware map configuration type get is not supported. Could you share your code perhaps in the chat? You don't need to share the entirety of it. It seems like the problem is roughly when you're having this run op mode, you have trouble doing hardware map.get the DC motor class, this. So could you perhaps copy and paste into the chat so that I can figure out what's maybe specifically wrong with your code? The error message is great and all, but it doesn't quite help me with everything. Oh, yes. So if you could, Catherine, then that would help a lot. Yes. Okay, so let's take a look now. All right, so .get. Okay, I see now. So I suppose I didn't define this properly. So DC motor.class refers to the class of motor it is. Since both ring shooter, ring flywheel, ring left, and ring right are all DC motors, instead of doing ring shooter.class, ring flywheel.class, you would do DC motor.class, DC motor.class, DC motor.class, because all of them are DC motors. When you really do this in actual FTC, you won't actually just have a singular class. You'll have like servos, you'll have continuous motors, you'll have not DC motors basically. But for the purposes of the simulation, pretty much all the motors in this example are going to be DC motors. Now, what this means is that I suppose I didn't define the get function very well. So you DC motor.class refers to the actual motor itself, what type of motor it is, and then front right refers to the name of the motor. So in order to change your code, instead of doing hardware.map.get ring shooter.class, instead you would have to do let me type this out, hardware map.get DC motor.class. And then afterwards, you would want to put the name. Let's see here. Let's just be sure I'm not actually messing this up now. Yes. So roughly your code snippet would look like that. Also, another thing to note, put semicolons at the end of all your statements. Ring shooter, ring flywheel, whenever you're defining a variable, you need to put semicolons. Be sure to always put semicolons. It's an annoying thing about Java. You don't do it in Python, but For Java, the language we're currently using, you need to put semicolons. Otherwise, it doesn't differentiate the state. Holy God. Okay. Now this is program stop. No device name, reply, no end type. Configuration includes the following orders. Device with name, ring, slide. Could you again reset your code with the hardware.mapget? Yes. Okay, no problem, Catherine. Again, just to be clear, get you go. The first thing you put inside it, the first parameter it takes in. This is the first statement: is the motor or whatever servo or whatever. It defines the type of it. For now, they're all motors. And then the second parameter is the name of it. So this will this correlates back to the map in which. So this correlates back into this thing where you would set the motor, what type it is. This is DC, AC, and then there's the name of it. So this correlates. So this is how you can determine this. Alrighty, great. So let's take a look at this thing now. Again, if anyone else has any questions, don't be afraid to ask. Oh, I see the problem. Okay, so when defining strings, you can't put a space at the end of ring flywheel. Spaces aren't allowed because this takes it as ring flywheel space. This is the literal statement. When you're defining a name, like for example, if I used to do Darren with a, I don't know, like DA and then space REN, it's not the same thing as Darren. It's instead would just be day and then Ren. In this case, since the code is, since the program is not that smart, if you put a space at the end of ring flywheel, let's see if I can draw on it. Is that how it works? No. Well, does it actually work? Basically, as you can see at the end of ring flywheel, I'm sorry if this gets a little pixelated, but see if this is a thing. Oh, yes. So you see underneath the ring flywheel, you put a space here. So this takes it as ring flywheel space, the name, instead of what you want it to be, which is just ring flywheel. I'm sorry, this is probably a little confusing, but basically, unlike when we humans read something, the AI, or well, not really an AI, it's more of an algorithm, computer code. It's not that smart. When it looks at this, it sees it with the literal space as being part of its name instead of it being something separate. So if you just delete the space at the end of ring flywheel over here, just cross that out. That should be fine. You will be your code should work as normal, or at least that error will be removed, and there may be some other error that pops up. Yes. Still has an error, though different. Oh, okay. No, great. All right. Well, let's take a look now. Where are the errors? Ring shooter not initialized properly. Okay. Not initialized properly. So what this problem would be is that it wouldn't be in the public op mode anymore. The more problem you have is that can you post your variables? Did you define your variables here for Catherine? Don't worry, there's no shame. Oh, okay. Oh, don't worry, there's no shame. So as explained earlier, when you want to map this thing, first you need a variable. This variable that you define, which is defined up here, this basically is what you represent in the code. This basically shows that this is the variable name is front right and we're front left, and that the type is DC motor. Likewise, in the code, you would want to name the private DC motor some other name in order to address some other part of the robot. But basically, private just means that it can't be accessed by other classes. DC motor is the type of the variable, and this is the name. And then, of course, the semicolon, because that's the end of the statement. And to remember to always put a bunch of semicolons, it gets pretty annoying. So when you don't have the variable, what you do is that, say, just for example, pretend that front right just doesn't exist. The declaration doesn't exist. Well, when you're getting this DC motor class front right, this basically represents the motor itself, like the physical motor, not like the one in the code. But since you're making that this variable is equivalent to this, well, the problem is that this variable doesn't actually exist. So when you try to go and map the variable to the motor, because obviously typing out the whole hardware map.get DC motor class front right statement, it gets kind of annoying repeatedly typing that out. When you try to do that, it doesn't know what you're assigning it to, because front right does not actually exist unless you declare it as a variable. So that's the problem you're running into. So be sure to just define the variable up top here. I hope my explanation of why you need to do that is sufficient so that you can understand that. Great then. Does it still create that error for you, or not anymore? Or is that a different error that pop up? Because the thing you'll learn about computer science. Oh, what do you mean? Yes, no. Oh, okay, great. Yes. Okay, great. The thing you'll learn about computer science, just don't be ashamed, is that your code will always break at some random point. You will almost never at any time write a code that flawlessly works the first time. So that's why debugging is so annoying, is so important, and that's also the reason why debugging is so annoying, is because, well, even if something seems to work in your head, and even if the code seems to work fine, there's always something the compiler would nitpick at, or there's always some random error that occurs because you forgot to type in like an R, or I don't know, forgot to put a semicolon somewhere. So if anyone else has any other problems getting this thing to work, do be sure to tell me. But there's at least the majority of people, or at least everyone at least gotten the hang of it, and at least understands why it works, so I can move on. If you're done, or if anyone has if anyone has any complaints, then just be sure to tell me. Or if anyone has any more questions, otherwise I can move on. Just share it in the chat or say it out loud. Doesn't really matter. Oh dear. So, all right. So since it's 11:45, I should probably go. And I don't want this lesson to take forever, like the first one. So here's the solution to the code, but let me just go give you a quick demonstration how it's supposed to work. So you basically go to the Visual Robot Studio Programming Challenge. Hopefully by this point you will have known how to go and go do the whole on-bot Java bit. Oh wait. Maybe I said this privately. Maybe that's not good. Oopsies. So the bottom one is just the solution to it. Since it's 11:46, I should probably go get a bit of a move on. But let's see. What name this document? But basically, if you did correctly, it should look a bit like this, where if you initialize the robot, it'll go forward, it'll turn, and it'll just score the goal every some time. And it'll then do a little bit of a scoring effect, I suppose. So now to move on, time for some review time. So if you want to add a color sensor, add a private variable like how you did with the motors. Use hardware.get to add it to the color sensor, configure as bond color sensor. And then use the color sensor to try reading color. Again, if anyone has any trouble with this part, don't be afraid to ask me. But this is just a continuation of well, this is just basically adding another thing. To be clear for the instructions, be sure to first import, second, set up the variable, third, hardware map, and then fourth, actually put it inside the code. Always remember this when programming this code. When you want to set something up, import, be sure you have the import correctly, variable, be sure you have variable. Also, something to note here is that, as I was saying earlier, there are different types of classes and different types of things. So when you, instead of DC motor, since a color sensor is obviously not a motor, it doesn't spin around or drive anything to do anything. Instead of DC motor, it gets placed in the color sensor type variable. And then afterwards, when you define the hardware map, instead of DC motor, since it's, again, it's not motor, it's color sensor.class instead of DC motor.class. again, this is why the first part is important, is because it defines what type it is. And then afterwards, the second part is the name, which is just the name. Yeah, and then the third part, though, more or less copy it down, I suppose. If anyone has any questions or has any concerns, then put it in the chat. If any questions, then do that as well. When you're done, do be sure to tell me in the chat so I can figure it out and know when to move on. Oh, it's still loading. Oh. Well, unfortunately, there's not much I can do about the whole loading problem that plagues you. Perhaps use a different browser, Edge, perhaps. I'm not entirely sure. Maybe I use a different browser, but I don't know how to fix the loading problem. That's just something that's built into the simulator itself. I apologize. When you manage to add the color sensor, be sure to tell me in the chat. Again, if you have any troubles doing such a thing, then don't be afraid to ask me. Again, the point of this is to learn, not to go and perpetually struggle on forth. So, has anyone managed to complete it? Or would you still like some more time before we move on to the next slide? Oh, to work. Okay. Well, suppose I'll move on then. So this is the review challenge. Use a while loop to have your robot go forward until it hits the red line. Then afterwards, you can go between the wobbles, which are the little, well, umbrella-shaped bits. And then afterwards, shoot the rings into the red goal. If you need help, then go back to the previous slides and see what a proper look looks like. How can I go and show both these streams? Let's see if I can do. Let's dual screen this. Well, the reason why I'm dual screening is just in case of someone didn't manage to get the previous slide. I'll just put up both slides all at once. I'm actually not sure this is better than. I'm not sure this is a better solution than just not. Oh, half slide option. Well, if anyone has any questions or like me to focus on a particular slide, then don't be afraid to tell me or ask me. When you manage to complete the challenge, be sure to go and tell me in the chat. If you have any questions, any concerns, and don't be afraid to ask me either. Yeah. Okay. Let's take a look now. Something wrong with internal color sensor, not red. So what did you? Okay. So when naming your variables, Bottom color sensor, right, green, um, did you initialize your let's take a look here. Something wrong with internal color sensor, not red. That is strange. Could you show me the initialization and the initialization part of the code, and also did you be sure to import it? Let's go this one by one. So did you import it first of all? If you did, then okay. So then did you define the variable private color sensor, bottom color sensor? Probably zoom it in so it's easier for you to see. Okay. And finally, did you set this? Did you define this correctly? Bottom color sensor equal hardware map dot get color sensor dot class bottom color sensor. So Catherine, did you manage to do that, or that's an interesting case. Not sure. It's interesting. Sensor dot hardware map dot get bottom color sensor. Does it work if you put space there? Let me see something. I'm not entirely sure if it's okay if you actually put space in between. This space there. Doesn't actually impact it. That's an interesting case. Well, let me try to do it myself then. Let me see here. So hardware.map.color sensor. Private color sensor, bottom color sensor. Oh, so private color sensor, bottom color sensor, bottom color sensor. It could possibly be the problem. But it's great. No one, you don't need to copy the code exactly. I'm just testing to see if I can maybe find out the problem by doing it myself. Telemetry. Alrighty, so let's see if this will work. Oh, I know, I can't save it. Very strange. Why is there an error? Oh, okay, Medulia. Okay. So if you're done with the review challenge and that well you can just leave at this point. That is the last slide. So if you finish though, I'm not gonna try to go on a long-winded talk. That's the last slide of the day. So feel free to leave if you're done. I hope to see you all for the last lesson, which will be lesson 5 next week. Okay, so now let's see here, Catherine. So what's your problem? So first of all, Catherine, does your code resemble mine in any way, or perhaps you can like snippet, or perhaps you can send snippets of your code, or perhaps just copy and paste them. Just you really just need to copy and paste this chunk of code into the chat. So could you do that, perhaps? So, can you do that, Catherine, so I can perhaps figure out maybe wrong? Okay, good. Alright, so let's see here. So over in public off mode, front right, front left, range should have range. Let me copy and paste it. Let's see if there's anything different. Range. Oh, Could you send us? Could you send a snippet of your variable of your private color sensor.bottom color sensor and also of your imports, Catherine? Yes, okay, let's take a look now. place. FTC color sensor. And you have an error still. What could possibly be the cause of the error? Radio, you see now. Right now, that's not the correct one. Program has stopped. Something went wrong with internal color sensor dot right. How did something go wrong with color sensor dot? Right, it's going to the real color sensor. Copy and paste the entirety of our code. Alrighty, and then afterwards, color sensor dot bottom color sensor. Could possibly be wrong with this. I really don't know what could be wrong with this. Color sensor, private color sensor, bottom color sensor. Honestly, I don't really know, Catherine. I copy and paste your code into mine and it works just fine. I'm not entirely sure what could be possibly wrong with it. I suppose it could just be something wrong with the simulator itself or something broken, I suppose. I'm really not sure because, again, I'm copy and pasting your code into mine, and it's not showing any errors, so I'm not entirely sure why would your code be wrong in any way. Doesn't resemble, it's not different from my code in any way. This will look different. So I'm sorry. I'm sorry in this case. I can't really figure out what's wrong with your code because it works fine on mine. So, I suppose you programmed it correctly. So it seems like you have a pretty good understanding of this, and I don't know why. I really don't know. It works fine on mine. There's no problems with it when it runs on my computer. So, yeah, okay, no problem. I don't know, just random technical glitch or something. Maybe I'm not. I'm sorry, I can't help you with this one, since well, there's not really a problem with your code to begin with. So, well, well, I suppose that's the end of the lesson. If anyone else has any questions, they can ask me. Yes, see you next week as well. So if anyone has any questions they would like to ask me, I'll go and give you a couple minutes. If there's no more questions, then I'll just be ending the meeting then. Well, I suppose since there's not that much left, Well, thank you for attending the meeting. Hope you come and well, thank you for attending the meeting, everyone. Hopefully you'll be rejoining for the next one.